Imagine the shock of medieval villagers discovering green-skinned children crawling from a pit, a true mystery from 800 years ago. They didn't speak English, they didn't eat anything but raw beans, and their skin was green. When the villagers of Woolpit found them, it was as if they'd walked straight out of a fairy tale, or maybe something far stranger. A boy and a girl, dressed in unfamiliar clothes, emerged from a wolf pit in medieval England. They were terrified, confused, malnourished, and, perhaps most disturbingly, completely alien to the world around them. And what they eventually claimed about where they came from would leave generations of historians, scientists, and skeptics baffled. But to fully understand how these strange children ended up in a quiet farming village, we have to go back. Not just to the moment they appeared, but to a world of shifting realities, forgotten folklore, and ancient underground legends. Woolpit was not the kind of place where extraordinary things happened. Located in Suffolk, England, the name comes from wolf pits traps that villagers used to catch the last of England's wolves. It was the 12th century, during the reign of King Stephen, and England was gripped by a civil war known as the Anarchy. But none of that really touched Woolpit. Life here was quiet, repetitive, and rooted in routine. So when two children appeared near one of these pits, weak, wide-eyed, and covered in dust, the townsfolk were stunned. The children spoke no known language. Their clothes were made of unfamiliar material. And most peculiar of all, their skin was a vibrant green. Some villagers believed it was a sign from God. Others whispered darker theories. And as the villagers brought the children into their homes, they had no idea that this was only the beginning. Because once the children began to recover, they started to talk, and what they said would challenge the very foundations of what people believed about their world. At first, the villagers thought the children were sick, some rare disease maybe, or a strange fungal infection from wherever they had come from. But no physician could find a cause. Their skin was green from head to toe, but not in patches. It wasn't bruising. It wasn't rashes. It was natural. And it faded slowly over time, especially after they started eating real food, which leads to another mystery. For days, the children refused everything they were given, meat, bread, porridge, until one farmer brought them a handful of raw, broad beans, freshly picked from the field. The children pounced on them like starving animals. That's all they would eat for weeks. Eventually, as they adapted to their surroundings, their color began to fade. The boy, however, never fully recovered. He was frail, sickly, and before long, he died. But the girl lived, and that's when the story began to unravel even further. Because when she learned to speak English, she finally told them where she was from, and it was nowhere on earth. The girl claimed that she and her brother came from a place called St. Martin's Land. She described it as a twilight world, where the sun never shone, where everything was bathed in a kind of perpetual dusk. The people there were all green, just like her, and they lived underground. She said they were tending their father's cattle when they heard a strange sound, like bells. Entranced, they followed the noise through a tunnel. and when they emerged, they were in Woolpit. She couldn't explain how they got there. But to the people of 12th century England, her story sounded eerily familiar, because stories of secret underground lands had existed in folklore for centuries. Some believed these were the fair folk beings who lived beneath the hills in a realm separate from ours. Others thought they were the souls of the dead, trapped between worlds. But what if these weren't just stories? What if there really were people living beneath the earth, just out of reach? This idea may sound impossible, but the girl's story had just enough detail to get people wondering, and soon the story of the Green Children spread far beyond Woolpit. Centuries later, historians began to examine the Green Children case with fresh eyes, and they came up with theories, lots of them. Some claimed it was all a fairy tale, a metaphor maybe, for immigration or poverty. Others believed it was a distortion of real events. For example, maybe the children were orphans from a Flemish community who'd been displaced by war. Their green skin? A result of malnutrition, specifically a condition called chlorosis, which can give the skin a greenish tint. And their strange language? Perhaps just Dutch, or an obscure dialect no one in Woolpit recognized, but this explanation doesn't fully hold up. There's no record of other green children, and none of the local monks or scribes could identify the children's language, even after hearing it for days. And then there's the girl's claim of tunnels, of twilight, of another land entirely. It was too strange to be a lie, too detailed to be fantasy, which is why some modern researchers have turned to a different idea, not history, but physics, because if the Green Children were telling the truth, they might not have come from another land. They might have come from another dimension. The theory goes like this. There are layers to reality. Most of us experience just one, but occasionally, just occasionally, those layers slip, intersect, overlap. We call these moments glitches, sudden disappearances, strange appearances, people vanishing for years and returning without aging, objects found in layers of earth too old to explain. The Green Children may have slipped through such a rift, a portal. They were chasing bells, remember. Bells are often reported in cases of liminality threshold moments where people claim to encounter thin places between realities. Could it be that St. Martin's Land isn't a fairy tale, but another version of Earth? Maybe an Earth stuck in twilight, or one where evolution took a different path, one with green skin. There's even a theory that the children came from a subterranean world, a hollow Earth civilization. Crazy? Maybe. But if we ignore the strangest explanations just because they seem impossible, we may never uncover the truth. Because this story doesn't end with the children. It ends with what happened to the girl once she grew up. And that part may be the strangest of all. The girl, whose name may have been Agnes, was eventually baptized and raised by the villagers. She adapted quickly, learned English, ate normal food. Her skin faded to a pale tone like everyone else. And as far as records show, she lived a normal life. She even married. Some believe she wed a royal court official named Richard Barry and moved away to live in a more prominent region of the country. But what's unsettling is this. She never recanted her story, not once. Even as an adult, she insisted she was from another land. that everything she told the villagers was true, that the tunnel, the twilight, and the world of green-skinned people was real. She never spoke of returning, never saw another person from her homeland again, and over time the story faded into legend until now. Because the more people study the Green Children, the more questions they find, not just about them, but about us, where we come from, where we might be going, and what might exist just beyond the limits of our understanding. Some say the Green Children were just lost orphans, that their green skin was nothing but anemia, that their strange language was just miscommunication. Maybe they're right. But the story has endured for over 800 years, not because it's logical, but because it taps into something deeper. The idea that we are not alone, that the world is full of hidden places, that now and then, just once in a lifetime, someone slips through the cracks. The Green Children of Woolpit may never be explained, but then again, maybe they weren't meant to be, because sometimes the greatest truths hide in the shadows of the impossible, and sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the ones that never truly die.